Hello, 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 hello.
Oh, hello.
Oh, she's still there. Gotta get it. Go away. Hello.
Hello.
Welcome back to Ranked. I'm Charles.
I'm McCurdy.
Hi, Nans. Anyway,
Nans is here.
as usual, we'll be here every Sunday, 8 p.m. talking about a new release. This is week 3. Let's bring up real quick. Where's that list at? Where's that list? Okay, week 3. Megan, Plane. This is our list so far. Nice and basic and boring. Also, I'm gonna switch it up with this. While Nans talks about members, give us a members toast while everybody stares at this shirt. Look at the art on that.
It's beautiful.
Look at how glorious Dolph humanoids are now that they have a unified look.
They clearly are superior to humans.
Barely.
Clearly.
They're going to take over everything.
You know what other humans are superior to other humans?
What?
Ranked members.
Oh, there you go. Nice.
Like
nice
Quarryman, Lemmy is God, Barrel Rider 26, The Entertainer, Dave M, Drink Up 44, P. Wilkinson, Andrew A, Chris Marasco, Nico, Spectre Chair Engineer, Gortonium, and of course SB.
I'm trying to go to solo Nans. There he is.
Of course.
Thanks, members. You guys are our heroes. And we all
together.
We all love you. And we miss you when you're not in the Discord hanging out with us. Anyway, okay, so where are my photos? We've got movie 3 was this, which missing and then Disparition Inquietante.
Did you get the?
Is that the foreign
Spanish?
poster?
Yeah, it's a foreign poster. We saw Missing, which was an interesting trip. I'm gonna have a little sip before I go into my. Okay, wait. Let me get rid of her. Let me go into this mode. Okay. Missing follows the digital life of a young girl named June, who, haunted by the death of her father and frustrated with the overbearing protectionism of her mother, is a stereotypically angsty, always on her devices teen. But when mom goes missing while vacationing with her boyfriend overseas, June gets to work investigating the disappearance herself by utilizing her computer skills. However, this is a gimmick movie, as we, the audience, are permanently tethered to her computer screen, making this something of a found footage flick mashed with a Snapchat-addicted teenager's wet-hot fever dream, as the only images the audience sees beginning to end originate from the cameras of electronic devices and desktop windows. And yet somehow, even with this limitation, Missing isn't missing anything. It's got action, romance, suspense, drama, twists, and turns as a complex story of kidnapping and crime unfolds before your very eyes while never leaving the jurisdiction of the electronic world. In fact, the only thing missing is justification for this particular system of informational delivery. Why are we trapped inside a little girl's computer? Are we a ghost? Are we artificial intelligence? Maybe this film is a brilliant statement forcing us to face our society-wide addiction to screens by literally turning us collectively into one big screen. No, it's just what they wanted to do because they could, I guess. Hey, Siri, how do I get my money back? I'm just kidding. I did like this movie. But I all I want to talk about is form versus content because that's what gimmick movies like this drum up is that lingering question of why is it, what necessitated the gimmick. But before we get to that, McCurdy, do you have anything fun?
I have so
trivially to add?
I don't have a burger this time. I have more like a steak, like a nice steak. Last time we had burgers. Today, nice steak. Okay?
Great.
It's not a plain movie.
I'm not missing a lot of stuff
well
on
cooked?
New releases. Have at it.
Yeah, man. This time, I had to actually do some digging on this one. But I do remember when this first movie. So first, before I get to that, Missing was written and directed by Nick Johnson and Will Merrick, and then the story is by Sev, and I'm gonna screw these names up. They're very Indian names. Oanian and Anish Chaganati. They were the producers, writers, directors of the first movie of Searching. So this film is a standalone sequel, meaning you don't have to see Searching. So if you hear anything about Searching, you don't have to see Searching to understand what's going on in this movie. But it does. I mean, it is the same format as we'll get into more about like the form of this movie and how this movie comes across, basically. So yeah, this is a standalone sequel to the 2018 film Searching. It was written and directed by Anish Chagaganti and Sev Onanen.
Is that these guys?
These guys. This is Sev, and this is Anish. So these guys got started producing in 2014. They created they created a 2-minute short film titled Seed for Google Glass. Remember Google Glass? If I can say it right.
That would have come in handy in this movie.
Well, they shot the film.
Yeah.
So they shot their 2-minute short with Google Glass.
Okay.
They won some kind of competition. They ended up producing several commercials for Google, which I think if you guys remember, do you remember those commercials where like it started with just the Google browser search and then people would just start typing? That's kind of, I could be wrong. That's where this all started. Is like these guys were producing these commercials. Some of them are kind of heartfelt. Some of them are kind of fun. You know, like
it'd be like, how do I impress a first date? And it'd be all romantic.
yeah.
And then
and then you'd going through and all that stuff. So that's
I'm ring shopping. What are great deals on wedding bouquet? You know, it's like your search history informs your history.
You're informing the audience. You're revealing information to the audience in such a very straightforward way in that regards. So this led them to making the film Searching, which was originally proposed to be just a short film. Like they just wanted to do an 8-minute short film, but it ended up being a feature because they were kind of coaxed and be like, no, you could probably make this into a feature. And originally they didn't think they would be able to do it, but when they started coming up with the intro to that film, they realized, oh, we have enough here. We could make a full-length feature. They had to convince the star of that movie, John Cho, which probably most known for Harold and Kumar or Star Trek. He had to convince him to play the main character in that film. And eventually he decided, okay, I'll do it. Because again, like Charlie's, you're mentioning this is a gimmick film. He didn't want to do a gimmick film. There was another film that had come out only a couple years prior called Unfriended that kind of did the same kind of computer screen gimmick. And they had to explain to him like, no. There's more to it. There's like they're trying to explain like there's some subtlety in the way that they do this thing. So he decided to do it. They spent 13 days on the film, and the whole film was done in post and was edited by here's our next group of guys, Nick Johnson and Will Merrick. These guys were college friends of Anish, and they edited the whole film. They also are credited of doing all of the basic graphic animatic stuff I wouldn't say animatics. They did all the graphics. So every time you see something on screen, Google search, all that, they had to create all that stuff. And what's funny is like they shot the film in 13 days for that film, but like most of the production of it was in the editing process of putting every little piece of it together. Film ended up being a huge success critically and financially, budgeted only at a roughly $800,000 and ended up nearly making $75 million. So huge success for them. Great success. Wow. But now let's look at this film specifically. So Sony had called Sev to do a sequel, and possibly with John Cho finding someone else. And they were like, they kind of didn't necessarily want to do a sequel. So Anish and Sev were hesitant on making one. And then they were actually convinced by the director of Black Panther, Ryan Coogler, who I guess that was in the room while they had gotten the phone call. And he was like, no, dude, you guys should do another one. Like you guys could, if there's anybody who can do it, you guys are going to do it. Like they're going to end up probably giving it to somebody else. And so they had pitched a bunch of different ideas for this next one, and one even including a serial killer and stuff like that. But then they realized they just went back to a much simpler idea, which was just a role reversal from the first movie. In the first film, it's about a dad looking for his daughter. This movie is the reverse of that. It's the child looking for the mother. And you see that, Nans, I don't know if Charlie and Nans, you caught that in the movie, but as you're watching this one, John Cho does make a small cameo because there's this, I guess we'll get into it, but there's like a little Netflix clip, and that in the first beginning of the movie, that's the first movie. That's a clip from the first movie that's recreated as like a live action Netflix series. That's from the first movie.
So the trunk opens and the guy's standing there. Was that John Cho's character as
Yeah,
you know?
so that's John.
Okay,
Yeah, you
yeah.
see, if you
Okay.
watch it, there's basically like, yeah, they do this thing where you're watching and you're like, oh wait, I'm watching a real movie, and the camera's panning back, and you realize, oh no, I'm watching Netflix on this
Yeah.
girl's computer, and
Yeah,
it's a
June is
television
watching
program.
Netflix, and yeah,
And then she goes to another browser, and it's like the real life person, and you see John Cho is actually in that image.
Okay.
So that's a little
That's cool.
kind of cool thing. So the film was obviously made very unorthodox, like we talked about again. This very kind of gimmick film involved the actors holding the cameras, usually like iPhones or GoPros, and they had to be very careful with their eye lines. And Charlie, you know all about this, doing editing and stuff. As far as if I'm looking at the camera right now, or if I'm looking over here, how is that going to register when you're watching the movie as to what am I looking at? Am I looking at somebody on screen? So what they would do is they would put folders on the computer screen so they could tell the actor, like, okay, you're looking down here now, or you're looking up here, or you're looking over here. So it was a very intense type of film that have to put together. And then they also, to get all this correct, they had to actually do the entire film, this one included. They had to previs the whole thing, so they had to basically make the whole movie before they even shot any of the movie. And the two directors would actually like act out the scenes, so they had a vague idea of like, okay, this is where this is going to go on the computer screen, this is how this is going to interact, this is when we're going to cut to this is how we're going to move into this thing. And what else? Oh, one other little tidbit. So in the first film, in Searching, Sev had actually written and created a whole storyline about aliens invading Earth that are in the margins in the background of the film. So if you're watching like little clips and stuff, there's stuff that says like White House meets with NASA and things like that, and it's all throughout the movie. In this movie, apparently, I didn't catch it, but they have continuations of that through line story that they've made. So there's actually like they've actually put in other little Easter eggs into this movie. And then finally for a little behind the scenes, you had some early ideas for the title, because obviously they could have said, oh, this is Searching 2. They also thought of the title of Searching Abroad. Sev, in this interview I'd watched, he wanted the title to be SRCH, as search, as like a, and nobody was like, no, that title sucks. But I think because this was a standalone sequel, for any audience that hadn't seen Searching, you're not missing anything by just seeing this movie. So
it's definitely not required material.
Like
I have not seen the first movie, and there's there's no continuation. It is just a separate thing entirely.
And then Nan's favorite thing I like to mention is the budget, because it really doesn't matter that much. But this movie, they spent $7 million on this movie.
With something like this, the budgets are fun, because it's obviously a very cheap movie to make. You just need, an Adobe After Effects subscription, and then I'm
That's probably most of the 7 million right there.
Like there's some recognizable faces, but nobody's making a lot of money on this.
I think most of the budget went towards, you had the actors, you had the whole sequences of going into Colombia, which they actually did shoot in Colombia. So there was a lot more in this film than the first one. The first one's very much more contained, and there's not as many big stuff. Like there's really only 2 stars in it, and one of them's like recognizable. The other one's more of like a big TV actor you may recognize. This movie obviously has a couple of those people, are more recognizable, familiar faces, which I'm going to go through real quick. So we have Storm Reed, who plays June. She's been in 12 Years a Slave, The Invisible Man. I recognize her most from The Suicide Squad, the most recent one by James Gunn. She played Idris Elba's daughter in that film.
Oh,
and then you have Nina Long, plays Grace, who's her mother. She was in Boys in the Hood, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Friday. Ken Leung, I best remember him from Lost, because I was like, oh yeah, that's the dude from Lost. But he was also in Saw. He was in X-Men 3. He was in Star Wars, the more episode 7. And then you guys remember Joaquin Del Almeida plays Javier in this movie.
Yeah.
We all
My
watched
man Javi.
24. We all watched 24. He played Ramon Salazar from season 2 when Jack cut that guy's head off. Remember that? That was awesome.
We're going deep again.
We're going deep, real deep. And then he was also in Fast 5. And then, yeah, I'm not going to mention the last person because I feel like we're going in a little too much spoiler territory. But Nans, that's enough of the deep dive. What did you think of this film?
I actually liked it, like a decent amount, more than I thought I would.
Where would you place it, Nans?
That's a good question. I mean, it's definitely above Plane.
Yeah, I think we can all agree it's definitely above Plane.
I, going into it, didn't think it would have a chance at contesting Megan for 1, but I don't think it's a clear loser to Megan.
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear what you guys think about where it should be above or below Megan, but
yeah,
I think it was, like a really effective movie. Definitely gimmicky, which I think I went in having told you guys I don't like these like looking at a screen movies necessarily. They're not bad just because of
what
they're
other ones
looking at screens movies, but I don't know. That's just like a gimmick, it seems like. But I don't know. Pulled it off. It wasn't it wasn't offensive in any way.
Yeah, I think that's what we're looking at is the way you put it. It's not super clear that it should be 1 or 2, but it's definitely. I mean, both Megan and Missing are better than Plane. Plane being just plain. It's that's kind of like an invisible movie. The only thing, like, I still think that like where I'm at, I go back and forth between Megan kind of feeling like it was such a smart movie up until the 3rd act, and then it, I like it just fine, but I would have appreciated just not digging out from the back pocket the backup plan of just how about a robot fight that's just kind of meaningless. This movie kind of has a similar thing where it's like, well, at a certain point we need to have June herself get into trouble, but the movie does a good job of any movie is just any story is just the delivery of information, right? Just delivery of information over time, and they really maximized which, by the way, since we're real quick, Nans, would you recommend the movie? Let's just so we can start getting into spoilers.
Yeah.
McCurdy.
This was a tough one to say. Like, here's the thing. Like, how last week we had that caveat of like, I'd recommend it for my dad.
Yeah. And I gave a long speech about no caveats. Just stick. But I might.
Here's
my backpedal on that a little bit because I feel the need to caveat it. Like I'm like, if you're into filmmaking, I recommend it. If you're not into filmmaking, don't see this movie.
Okay, here's the thing.
That's where I'm at.
Okay, that's my opinion on it, right? I really like this movie. I was on the edge of my seat the entire time. When information came across to the film that I was shocked. I was like, I literally had goosebumps. I was like, oh shit. Multiple times in this movie. So in that regards, yeah, I would recommend it. But maybe for older viewers, they might not really appreciate it for like how maybe in some, like I told my mom about the movie and I showed her the trailer and she was like, oh, I don't know if I like that movie. It's too fast. Like there's too much information happening on the screen. And I don't think the movie's that fast paced, but I do. That's what's hard for me is like, I literally did tell my brother-in-law and my sister this weekend. I said, if you want to see a good movie, I would check that one out. But I mean, it is you kind of have to sell them a little bit on it because I think some people are going to be like, I don't know if I want to watch a movie that's takes entirely in place on a computer screen. But like you said, this movie, it's revealing information and it does it in ways that you're like, you feel like you're almost in the character's head where you're like, okay, we're searching this thing. Okay. And like you're going through it. So
it's
I
clever
enjoyed
at
that.
times in the way it delivers that.
Yeah,
There are
yeah.
like, but here's the thing. Here's what it comes down to, and the reason why, like, you have to get over a hurdle in the beginning, right? If I put this movie on for my family, they'd be like, what even is this? Why are we watching this? I would be, and I might sit there and go, no, just wait 15 minutes. But everybody's so ADD today, they don't wanna. They want the movie to be a masterpiece 30 seconds in. So
Yeah.
so that's the trouble is you do have to get into it. But these gimmick movies, and I'm going to keep calling it a gimmick movie because that's what it is, because this movie wasn't made. I would have a lot more respect for this movie if it was made by a no-name, a nobody, just like Blair Witch, right? Just somebody who was like, I really want to tell this story about a little girl whose mom goes missing overseas, but I don't have any money. So I'm going to do this really creative thing, and I'm going to screen capture a whole bunch of things, and I'm going to weave it all together because I only have $12 to make this movie.
Yeah.
I would be really impressed. That goes against what I normally say. Like when we talk about the Bond movies, I'm always like, watch it. We're watching this in a vacuum. You don't know anything about behind the scenes. You don't know anything about budgets. But with this, it's different.
I would
arbitrarily say it's different.
I would argue to that point, though. I would argue
What?
that point, though. That's what I would say about the first movie, because the first movie is that, like, they're nobodies. They made a movie for like nothing, and it turned out really good, and it did really well. This movie,
So
it's
this
like,
is the follow-up.
okay, this is the we have like we proved that we can do a good movie, so we're gonna do that same thing again with a
Yeah.
little more budget, and you can see where they put the budget and the locations and the actors and stuff. But like, yeah, I'm just saying to your point, like, yeah, I think maybe if you saw the first one and didn't know this was a sequel, you might have been more impressed.
And it just reminds me of Paranormal Activity, which are their Paranormal Activity was the first one was, it was a fun, like, you got to see it in theaters type of thing. But it's a one-off. It's a single use. And I was impressed by, because I was hesitant to even see this movie at all. Just like Nan said, it's like, that's a movie about a computer screen. I don't know. But eventually you do get into it, and the way it's twisting and turning things where it's like, oh, so it's oh man, it turns out that so-and-so is doing it. Like the way they're divulging all this information in sometimes really clever ways. But when it comes to the gimmick movie, that the ultimate question is always, can we justify the gimmick? And that's what I mean. If it was made by somebody who was like, we don't have any support, I'd be like, wow, what a creative way to tell their story with a little bit of money. But without that, you're constantly sitting there going, okay, why? Like, okay, for example, I'm going to go talk to my mom's friend because I'm starting to suspect that maybe, because at some point everybody's a suspect, because this is one of those stories where it's twisting and turning. So now it's this person. Wait, it wasn't them. It was actually this person. And, so it's fun in that regard. But it's like, I'm going to go talk to her. The filmmakers are like, okay, wait, how does she go talk to her? How about she Zoom calls her? No, that wouldn't be taking her by surprise. She could just turn it off. How about she wears an Apple Watch and goes to her office? And it's like you constantly having to justify why these things are happening. Like how can we tie in a device? And yes, devices are ubiquitous, but even at one point they cut to a backup cam, and it's just to show that we have cameras everywhere all the time. But I'm sitting there going, why are we bending over backwards to stick to this arbitrary rule, as opposed to, I would be fine if the movie occasionally popped back into reality and then popped back into the computer. I'd be more than okay with that.
Well,
but for some reason, it's like, no, we have to, no exceptions whatsoever. We have to stick to this rule. And I don't know why. And so that's what kind of bugs me. It's impressive, but
like if you remove the gimmick, does this just become a forgettable, like, not so great movie?
Yeah. And
by the end,
that's
where I don't necessarily agree. Like, I think this movie, even though it is a gimmick movie, and I agree with you, I do find that it uses the gimmick to its advantage. And I know what you're talking about there. Like, I even wrote this when I was trying to, like, go through my thoughts of what I thought about the movie. Because overall, the story at the end of the day is actually pretty good. And it does, because it's a POV movie more so than I would say in something like Paranormal Activity, where you're literally in the mind of the main character at times, or you're in the mind of another character at times, or you're in the mind of another character at times. Even you see
You're watching a screen cap.
You are, but you're seeing as you know which character you are, because there are moments where there's like no dialogue and it's just people typing information out or typing or doing searches, and you know who you are at that moment. You're like, oh, this is from June's perspective. She's trying to find some. Oh wait, this is from Grace's perspective at some other point in time. Oh wait, I don't know who this character is. Like there's moments like that I feel like that's clever. There's other things like and I remember listening to interviews when they were talking about searching, because that was when the film, this concept was completely new. Like there was Unfriended, but that was really just like people on the internet, like us right now talking. Which, by the way, there's a moment in the movie where I was like, please do not parody us. Like, please do not. You know what moment I'm talking about. But there's something that they talked about specifically is like, if you watch me type something out, if I type, a comment in the comment, and then I decide to erase what I'm about to say, like that says a lot about what the character is like thinking.
Mm-hmm.
That says a lot. Like that's saying, I want to say this, but I'm having second thoughts on saying this. Or like if you erase it 5 different times, that's stuff.
Oh man,
he's frozen.
He's not coming back from this one. I'm just going to continue from what he's saying.
Yeah.
It certainly is clever. I mean, without a doubt. McCurdy, you blanked out for a second, so let me.
Yeah, no, I was like looking at
what you're saying.
Yeah.
It certainly, and that's what I mean. It certainly is clever. Where like one of my favorite moments was very simple. It was her mom. I think she maybe had just gotten off the phone with her or whatever, but it was early on, and she had just spoken with her mom, and then she goes to respond to a text from her mom, and the camera just ever so subtly is petting down from the top of their conversation. So you're reading their previous conversation, which was like a fight or something or whatever. And then it gets down to new as she's typing in. Like stuff like that is certainly clever. And that's where I certainly give it respect. I give it props for having this it maximizes that concept of delivering information in these digital ways. It is creative. Like it is certainly creative, and I enjoyed it. Like I did enjoy this movie, but then maybe for 2/3 of it, I was like, oh, this might be beating out Megan, because Megan kind of feels somewhat incomplete to me, even though I love the messaging in it.
I feel like
this is more of a complete movie,
really cleanly.
Yeah,
versus Megan.
It's where I kind of struggle is at first it was all just like digital sleuthing, but then eventually it becomes real. So the major spoiler alert is that Dad comes back. So in the beginning, she thinks Dad is dead. The fact that it wasn't just it was a recognizable actor. So I was like, he's coming back, but he comes back.
Was he?
I've seen it. He's
so
not
when
like,
I went,
I feel like
not
I
like a big
recognize him,
name,
but I
but
did not
he's
expect him to be back.
so he was another person I was going to put in my notes of people you may or may not know. But Tim Griffin he's done a lot of television. Like he's just in everything.
Yeah.
But he's not known for anything specific. Whereas I think all the other actors at least are somewhat recognizable faces where you're like, oh yeah, I remember him or her in that movie. He was like kind of like I don't know if I've seen this. I didn't recognize him, but I guess we could be watching different things. But yeah, sorry, go on. You were saying
So I think it's so he shows up and then at that point, that's what I mean. Where okay, we got to stick to this rule where everything is from a Ring doorbell or everything is digital. And so, you have those moments where they're really cropping in tight and it's all blurry and that is the only thing where I'm torn, where the whole time I'm sitting there going, okay, wait, would this be better right now if this movie wasn't told with it? Because, and again, I bring up form versus content, because form versus content, very simple concept. Take something like the evening news, right? The content could just be somebody sitting there reading a news report. The form, though, is what gets heightened in something like Action News They're like, where like the you know, they got the music and they got the sound effects, they got the CGI stuff, and it's then the fire. Last night, murder happened in downtown, like you know, stuff like that. That's the form. The form is taking this like hyper energetic thing, where the content is just a guy got shot last night or whatever. So with this movie, the form is obviously what we've been talking about. And then there's the content, which is just the story about this girl. So, and I don't know, maybe again, I haven't seen Searching, but like this movie, I think again, where I'm torn is that it's this girl. Hang on. Let me just drive it home.
Right.
If they matched, if the form matched the content, maybe there would be something more there about like some kind of statement about this girl who's constantly attached to screens and what that means, and there'd be a little more meaning there, but it's not that at all. It is
I didn't get that message.
No, it's not like
like
Megan or whatever. And Megan didn't need to do this tethered to a computer screen to tell that story, and that's what I really like about Megan. With this one, it's not like it was required for that, but the whole time I'm sitting there like, you know, it's like any found footage movie. It's like, are they justifying the gimmick or not? With something like Blair Witch, they really do, in a way that nobody's really been able to replicate since. With this, it's clever, and then at times it's forced by just stick it. We have to stick to the rule. We can never leave the computer, you know.
So I think, so I finished this movie. And then I went home and I was like, okay, I want to watch Searching. So I found Searching and ended up watching it. I think I get what your problem is with this movie is probably it's mainly the third act, because it really heavily relies on a lot of much more. Most of the movie is on computers. The third act of this movie relies a lot on surveillance camera to tell the story. Watching Searching, I'll tell you one thing. Searching's twist is a little more, I feel like it's a little more far-fetched, honestly. But I don't think the third act necessarily relies on surveillance footage or you know, going to a place where you're just having, like you're saying, is like, we have to stick to the gimmick. Searching, I feel like you're able to tell that third act story without like relying like, oh, we got to tell the story, but how do we do it? Oh, we'll do surveillance footage for the third act, you know, like it doesn't have to do that. And I would recommend you seeing Searching so you compare the two. I will also say that I feel like these films are very similar. It's not that, I think some people would say, oh, I already saw Searching, so why do I need to see Missing? And then you'd see both movies and you'd be like, these are the same movies. And I would say, yeah, but they're different stories and there are some different twists. Something I want to add, though, is, so like we talked about Megan, like forget Plane. But when we talked about Megan, we talked about the theme of that movie being about how like being parents kind of has, or technology has kind of superseded parenting in some ways.
Yeah.
And like the dangers and of that. Sorry, my nose is all clogged up.
Gross.
Yeah, it's gross. But this movie, you're like, well, what's the theme? Where are we going to? So the one thing that I felt like was they were at least trying for something was, so everyone heard about like the murders that happened in, I think it was Iowa, right? Like the Idaho. Thank you. So one of the issues that came out of that was that they were tired of a lot of like armchair detectives or people who thought they knew better and like trying to find information when there was no information there, or like they were speculating heavy speculation on stuff and then just going everywhere on the internet without like really focusing on what actually was happening in the investigation. This film kind of touches on that. I don't think it's not like Megan, where Megan was like really honed into that theme, but it sort of touches on that a little bit, where she's just trying to figure out why her mom's at, and she's like stuck in the middle of this crazy ass story that involves like an actor and like someone who she thought was somebody else, and then the whole time we have no idea what her mom is, her mom's big secret.
Those
so
are the fun parts. The fun
yeah,
part of the movie. That's what I said. The first 2/3 is like oh
there's
no,
a
it
lot of
turns
twists and
out that
turns.
it exactly like
Yeah.
because by all
They really
appearances it
compile
looks
at
like
one point.
mom, she got on the flight and she's sending photos like, hey, look, we're she's even like texting in the style of the mom where she's kind of messing things up, like they do a good job of making it seem like that actually is her mom. It later turns out that it's not her mom. It was an actress, literal actress, hired by the boyfriend to make it look like they were on vacation, but really she's already out of the picture. She'd already been kidnapped by the dad, who turns out her dad wasn't dead. Her dad is actually like an abusive husband to her mom, and mom actually changed her identity to and told it like cut her life in half, moved away in order to get away from this terrible husband and father, and like meandering that whole story is the best part, but by the end, like when it's all coming to a head and it's like dad comes and kidnaps her, like why did he keep mom alive?
Good
Did he
question.
explain
No,
that?
he says
What
he's
is
like,
his motive?
I
He
wanted
wanted
you
to
to
get the
feel.
family back, right?
No. He says in the movie, I wanted you to feel like what it felt like for me to not be with my daughter. Basically, he didn't want to kill his wife. He
He
didn't want
wanted
to
to
kill his.
torture his wife.
He wanted to torture her by putting her in the same kind of position that he was put in, as being put in jail when he
Yeah.
was put in jail. Like he says something. The line that he says is something specific to that. So
Yeah.
it is explained why he doesn't kill her right away.
But you're watching moments like that through like a Ring doorbell. You know what I mean? Like that's the trouble is when you're gonna we have to stick to the rule. Why can't we just for 15 minutes? Why can't we jump out of it? Why do we have to do this? But there are those clever moments where they'll do something like they'll like you said in the beginning, they do the whole dramatic retelling. So it looks like you're watching this really gritty professional film, and then you pull out and it's just a Netflix show. And then they do the same thing at the end. That stuff is clever, but I am just sitting there the whole time like maybe this story would have been better if the third act had jumped out, of the computer.
So
it's hard to say. That's why I have a hard time taking the top spot away from Megan, because Megan is this serious film, and then this just has this gimmick that is really good at times, but then other times it does come across as kind of show-offy, or just like again, we have to. She's like, I'm going to wear the Apple Watch, and the Apple Watch has a camera in it, and I'm going to get footage of her confessing that she's that my mom's best friend. One of the twists and turns, my mom's best friend is in on it, and then later it turns out she wasn't in on it again. A million twists and turns.
Yeah.
That's the fun stuff. I'm sitting there next to Nans, and I'm like, oh, he probably heard me several times being like, oh, no way. Oh, as the drama and the twists and turns are unfolding. But then by the time we get to the very end, and it's like it all leads up to, hey Siri, call the cops. I'm like, oh, I don't. That's where I start to. That's where I'm like, I have to question whether or not Megan
do you feel like the
that top
film
spot.
Yeah, and here's for me, like, kind of what you're talking about is that after, and I think it does not help that I ended up watching the next film, the first film. Watching the first film is like watching Ghostbusters and then watching Ghostbusters 2 and realizing that they stuck to the story beats very closely. If that makes sense. Like,
yeah,
this movie starts with an emotional backstory that takes place in a previous era, right? And so the browser looks older and all this other stuff. And then you find out some information about the characters that's kind of sad. And then we jump in time and we find out what's going on. Same thing happens in the first movie. You have this emotional beginning, and then we find out what's going on, and then the thing happens where somebody goes missing, and that's the same thing that happens in this movie. The biggest difference between the two, I think, and I hate being like, well, the first movie did this. The first movie does. There is a moment where they do the gimmicky thing that you were like with the iPhone, or not the iPhone, with the watch, something similar to it. But it makes sense why it happens. This movie, it's like it does feel like they had to make an excuse to make that happen. My other big complaint, and I thought maybe you would bring this up, but there are moments in this movie where I'm like,
we need
nitpicking
more
it a little bit.
Javi. Why is there not more Javi?
Well, I was
great.
like, we need more Javi.
Yeah.
There were moments in this movie where I felt like I needed to nitpick it a little bit because I was like, would she really know how to do that? Like, does every Gen
this
Zer
movie made
know
me
how
feel
to
dumb.
do?
I
was
went
stuff-
straight home. I changed all my passwords.
Did you
Get
go
your
and check
security
your
up
Google
to date.
location and stuff?
Because apparently you could just call and go, hey, yeah, you know, my birthday is just like that was fun.
There was
though.
some
That was
little,
fun.
It was, but there was some little things in there where I'm like
she
okay,
says,
my
she's like, does he-
suspension to disbelief is like a little on edge.
Yeah.
So
Does he
for
come
me-
across as somebody who uses the same password for everything?
I
Like,
love that.
And that
That
is
was great.
believable. That is, you know, I used to do
That-
that, and then I got smart. But yeah,
I love that. That was
Yeah.
great.
she for anybody who hasn't seen it and cares to know, she's trying to hack into her mom's Google account so she can find clues and stuff, and she can't do it, so she hacks into her mom's boyfriend's account, and that's what starts to open up the door to you know, he's
Also
not
the
exactly who he
suspect.
says he is, and all this stuff, and that's the thing. So it's a very complicated story that they do a really good job of weaving in all those twists and turns to keep you engaged, because at the end of the day, you are just staring at a computer screen. But it's not, that is a way of diminishing it and simplifying it, is, oh, it's just a computer movie. But I'm saying that I like all that stuff where it's like, by hacking in there, you find an email from somebody and it's like, oh, he was cheating on her. He was seeing other women, but that doesn't even turn out to be true. It turns out that she was an actress. Like, that stuff is the fun stuff. But then by the end,
so twisty and turny.
She's kidnapped, and the only way that we can continue to stay in the gimmick land is by watching everything through security cameras. And something that was interesting, of course, was that turns out her dad was watching her the whole time. He was like hacked into her IP address, and he was watching. So we've been watching her screen, and so has he the whole time. Like, cool. But again, it's like, well, we have to stick to the gimmick. So everything's going to be on the security cam footage, and we're all millennial enough to be able to follow that story. But for the millionth time, I'm sitting there the whole time going, does this moment have to be through a security camera? Can we not jump out of the found footage land for 15 minutes?
Like, they could have hit home some points better if they weren't trying to stick to the gimmick so hard.
Yeah. It's
I
creative,
think for
and
me-
as filmmakers, we're like, that's cool. But is it when my, again, to bring my dad into this, would he watch this and be like, masterpiece, or would he be like,
Well, I was thinking
that's-
about
I will-
McCurdy's
I mean-
mom. Like, would she know what's happening?
My
and then she would.
mom-
You can follow.
No,
Yeah, like,
They
you could
click
certainly
around
follow.
so
Good,
quick.
But like, my mom would be like, wait, what? Like, she would be
What's
the mom.
TaskRabbit?
She would be the one who'd be like, have to ask you 50 questions, and you're like, just shut the fuck up and watch the movie. You know what I mean? Like, that would happen a lot in this movie. Charlie, I think the more we talk about it, the more I'm confident. Like, it's a number 2 for me, and I only say that because, like, again, I watched the first one. Okay, watch this movie. I think the first one, the twist in the first one is like, I had legitimate chills after watching the first one's the big twist, because I was like, holy shit. This one
I like those moments in this one where I'm like,
there's I'm
like
lot
grabbing
of
Nance.
shit
I'm like,
moments.
Nance, oh, this is gonna
Holy
get
shit.
crazy. You
I
know?
like the live photo on the airplane. It's like how we find out.
You were like, oh,
and that's the thing, utilizing
But-
certain things that we
but-
know about. Like, he didn't know what a live photo was, and he took a live photo, not realizing that he gave the game away. But we know what those are. My parents would be watching this movie going, what are live photos?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
that's where it moves?
Yeah.
Oh,
But-
you know, so it's...
But okay, but the other thing was comparing these, and I don't want to compare the two movies, but I feel like you kind of have to, because
You're the
it's
only
like,
one who's seen them both, so go,
I know,
go
but-
ahead. Go ahead.
I saw Searching, but I don't remember it. And
Okay,
that's
so
what I guess
watching-
I could say is a worry with Missing. Is like,
you don't
I'm
need
gonna
to see,
forget
you
it.
do not need to
Single-use
see-
movie.
You
Single-use
do
movie.
not need to see Searching to see this movie. But when you compare the two, you can see like, oh, this was the blueprint, and like, let's Like, there's some things that I think this movie does a lot better. Like, I thought the twist in this movie, there were way more twists and turns where you're like, you think it's this thing, and then they switch back and it's like, actually, it's this. And you're
Like
still
everybody
guessing
was a suspect
the whole time.
Everybody except Javi was a suspect at one point. You know,
But but the one thing I didn't like about this movie was that there's like two big things that towards the end of the movie are like, these things stick out, and I feel like I'm smart enough to know, like, are you that dumb? Like, I'm yelling at the screen so in the movie, the beginning of the movie, this is a spoiler, Grace constantly calls Junebug.
Yes.
And I'm like,
when
it was
typing
obviously the password.
that was the obvious password. I'm like,
yeah.
That was very obvious. And
Yeah.
that's the thing. It's like Charlie, you and I are like, we're filmmaker guys. Like, we know like kind of the ins and outs of how like screenwriting works. So maybe I'm like, well, maybe, someone else might not pick that up, but I'm like, it felt really obvious. The other big thing was the fact that we get this buildup of information on Kevin where we find out, no, he really did love her. And then we find out that was all bullshit.
Yeah.
And so, but while we're finding out that he really loved her, she had made a phone call to this guy that we don't know who he is. He's out in the middle of nowhere. And he's like, I run this special program. And you're like, well, what about that guy? So as you're leading through the movie, I'm like,
the church guy.
That guy, yeah, the church guy.
Jimmy Church guy. Yeah.
Jimmy Church guy, you're leading through the movie and you're like, well, what about that guy? Like, I kept thinking that. And then obviously eventually they go back to it. The other big thing, and this is the first movie does the same thing, but I think the first movie is slightly more effective, is you're leading up to the end of the movie. And this is kind of like a screenwriting no-no, is adding new information to get to the end of the movie, or adding exposition to get to the end of the movie. This movie sort of does that a little bit, but they do it in a way that's like, it's a mystery, so you didn't know it at first. And I don't even know if the character knows it right away. But like, as the audience, you're like, oh, wait, what? That's her dad was this. Like, you were explaining how the end of the movie goes, right? And this movie, it's like, you get to a point, and then we learn something, and then we're like, oh, wait, her dad's alive. And then there's a jump back in time where we're on Grace's computer monitor, and it's Windows XP. So it kind of establishes this took place prior to them having whatever computer they had. And then we learn all this new information of like, this is how I met Heather, and this is why I had to leave him, and all this stuff. And so you're like, okay. And then we jump back and forward to time to like what's happening. The first movie does this same thing, but I think it works a little bit better because the way the context they do it. So all that being said, Charlie, I would not fight you if you were like, this is number 2, because I'm like,
no,
there's a part of me that wants to do number 1
too. Like, I'm just
part of
surprised
me
how close it got. Like,
yeah,
it's
a
there.
Close number 1.
It's hard. Again, it's like you said, at one point, that's why I said in the opening, I'm like, this movie does have everything: action, romance, mystery. Like, it actually takes a little time out to run you through the relationship of the mom and Kevin, the boyfriend. Yeah. And I actually, I really love that moment. It was actually pretty great. It was going through their personal correspondence as they sent. I'm always saying that with dating too. Women are always shocked when you send a video or a voice recording, and I'm like, this movie proved my point that you can't get to know somebody just via text. Like, that's how people hide from each other today. No. They're sending videos back and forth, and that you get it's more human. Right. This movie in general wouldn't work if it was just text on a screen the whole time. No. You need people's faces, you need interaction and all that. So, I'm and that moment was cool. It is almost kind of unfortunate that all ended up being BS, because it turns out Kevin was in prison at one point. He met the dad. They cooked up this whole plot. And Kevin just gets like unceremoniously shot in the face by cops in Colombia at some point.
What does he get out of it?
Yeah, and that's where it was like, it almost would have been nice if Kevin had a little bit of redemption. Like, maybe it turned real. Maybe he got killed by the dad when he was like, actually, no, I love this woman. I love your ex-wife. and come at me,
Yeah.
bro. And then maybe he got killed by, but no, he just killed by the cops. So that just kind of erases that whole romantic moment. And but getting to my point, it's just those moments where it's just June sitting at the computer and there's some mystery there. That stuff is what I enjoyed the most. But it's like by the end where she has to be plugged in, and then we have to force the gimmick. At that point, it was forced. It was like, okay, we have to live in the computer and experience all this stuff through the security cameras, and then Siri saves the day. Like it was. Like that's what I trip up on. That's where I agree with you with a spot too. And then on top of all of that is just like, end of the day, this is just, it is a gimmick movie. It is a single use movie. Whereas I could see Megan again and enjoy it.
Yeah.
I don't feel compelled to ever watch this movie again. It's like you watch Murder on the Orient Express and you know who done it. And you're like, well, I never need to see that again. But no, it's actually, whatever iteration of that movie is beautiful, and you have great performances and all that.
I might
This
disagree
movie,
with you.
once it's done, I'm just like, I don't know if I ever would want to watch this again.
I might disagree with you in that I might want to just rewatch this to see if I can catch things I didn't catch before.
Like
in that
the
regard,
alien invasion thing.
Like alien. Well, not just besides the alien invasion thing, which that's hilarious. But just besides that, like catching, seeing if you already know who the guy is or what the plot is.
Knowing the ending, can you go back through and
can you go back through and rewatch it?
That?
And that's maybe the only reason I would want to rewatch this. But I do think that's what's hard is like I do think this is a really good movie.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
I'm gonna go back on what I said about like what I recommend is like, yeah, I would recommend it. It does take some like understanding of how it goes, and you're like, oh, because you're basically saying like, we watch any movie, we understand the cinematic language naturally because we watch movies forever. This movie, it's like you have to reorient yourself. It's like watching a movie in a foreign language. You have to re-understand all these premises and concepts of how information is unveiled. But then you realize quickly, you're like, oh wait, I know what this is because I computer. I know how to search Google.
Yeah.
If I want to rank it, I would say like it's maybe one, but it's not. It's like Megan and this, or like this, like that's this, and then Plane's all the way down here.
That's Plane can just live at the bottom of the list indefinitely. But it's I will admit I'm torn. But really, when it comes down to it, it's like yes, it is clever, it is creative. Ultimately, it is a story about a young girl and her mom reconciling and all that. But like I just it's hard to give top spot to a gimmick movie. I'm not trying to diminish it by continuing to call it
that's not
a gimmick
the only
movie,
reason
but
it's not
it is.
Megan.
It is a gimmick movie.
I would sooner watch Megan again than watch this one again. Like you were saying, it's like you've seen it. I get it. And it's kind of just like searching. I know I saw it. I couldn't tell you the first thing about it. I have no desire to watch it.
Like you have to caveat it. If you're going to recommend this, you really have to caveat it.
As a caveat.
Like forget about talking about my dad again. My grandpa he'd never talk to me again if I put this movie on.
No, he would be so lost.
But like
it would be like, how do I get it to work? You turn it on and turn it back off again.
Yeah.
This
movie's bad. Turn it off and reboot it. But yeah,
how does this phone work? You're looking at the back of it. You gotta look at the screen.
Yeah. So I'm like it demands it's hard to just like draw a line in the sand with this movie, but ultimately I just have a hard time. Like I said, the core theme is it's mother and daughter reconciling. The movie begins with them being at odds, and then it ends with them being like, I love you, mom, lol, and that's cute and all. Whereas Megan just thematically speaking, Megan legitimately attacking the like a very real issue today of parenting and technology, and she's trying to do a good thing, but the road to hell paved with good intentions. She's trying to build this robot selfishly for herself, but then claiming that it's for the good of everybody. Because look, it can help toilet train your kid. But then the scary thing being like, no, this thing might actually try to be mom full stop. Like try to get rid of the parents entirely. And there's that's where it's smart. That's a really smart movie. This movie's smart in terms of the complexity of the whodunit and the mystery and all that. But it's hard to give it top spot next to Megan that's got something to say thematically. They're both smart movies.
Yeah.
So you could say they're both smart and certainly
I think-
creative at times on the side of Missing, but Megan,
Yeah. Going back to my
can't
point, I think
knock Megan
going
out.
back to
say
my
they're both
point,
surprisingly
I
good.
agree. Going back
Yeah.
to my point, I agree. I think Megan's solid, very theme-based movie. Like it's very sticks to its theme. This movie has a theme other than outside the mother-daughter thing, like as far as it relating to the format and stuff, as far as like trying to solve mysteries and people who don't really have any business of trying to get involved with something that has nothing to do with them and that kind of thing. But as you were saying, I think this movie doesn't stick to that as much, and sometimes it has to try to hold on to a gimmick too much that it doesn't always work. But overall, it's very clever. It's very good. But yeah, I agree with you. I think Megan at least is like throughout. It's a very simple, easy movie to understand. You don't have to do a class on the movie to watch it, I guess. That makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. Like you have to know how all these things work.
And there's some stuff there's some stuff in the movie that I was like, wait, if such and such thing happened, this movie would fall apart. Like I went into my Google and I was like, can I look at my locations? I can't look at my locations because my location stuff is not set up.
Yeah.
So if your stuff isn't set up, then the movie wouldn't work. Like there's little things like that are like, I'm going to say those are nitpicks because it's like you have to have something to tell the story. But
yeah, well, there's some, I got something that's not exactly, I don't think it's definitely not nitpicking, but I think like there were some interesting mechanics early on. Like at first it was, we only have 48 hours to get this footage from this hotel. I just need somebody to go over there. And I really enjoyed that because that's very true to life. Like how difficult to break through the red tape to get the FBI to go. Just have your doorman walk over there and get the footage. But and everybody's like, sorry, we can't do that for no reason other than the fact that it's bureaucracy. That's how it works. But on top of that, she only has like $350 minus half, I think, because she spent that on booze to throw a party. So there was this mechanic of she only has so much money, and she's like, and I love that moment where she's trying to hire somebody, the equivalent of a TaskRabbit, which is a website where you can just hire people to do random odd jobs. And so she's like, whatever the Colombian variant of that is, let me hire this guy. He's like 5 stars. Everybody loves him. He's like the most popular guy in Colombia. $250 an hour or whatever, and she only has like $100 left or whatever. So then she hires Javi, who's like 2.5 stars. He's
who
kind
would
of
give
a
him
mess up.
rating.
Like oh yeah. It turns out Javi's like the coolest guy on the planet, but it's so that money thing was clever. It was like you had a little bit of a ticking clock, and then you had the money restriction, but then that went away very.
I feel like the movie is
away.
very act heavy break. Like there's some really strong breaks in acts.
Like they would cut to the news. Like something would happen, they'd cut to the news. The news would kind of
but what I'm saying is like
just watched.
This movie, like we had a very distinct Act 1, a very distinct Act 2, and Act 3. You know what I mean? Like they did that. You could tell the movie did that on purpose to break the movie up into the sequences, so you knew where you were at in the film, and like even to the point of like, oh, we're gonna shut the computer off, and like, no, we're not gonna shut the computer off because I found some new information about this other thing. So you do feel the character being like, oh, I almost gave up on this, but then I was gonna ask you, did you think it was a little bit of a cheat when like the FBI guy would come to her with new information that was like, well, we found this out, and then it had nothing to do with any of her investigation stuff? Or did you feel like that worked for you?
I wonder how much information they really communicate at all, right? Like, because he on multiple occasions told her, hey, you're just gonna have to trust me on this, but at the same time he was feeding her info. So it's like, would he have done that in a real life situation?
And do they just call directly? I don't know. I don't have enough run-ins with the FBI.
Yeah.
It's just it was
more or less that like as
It didn't
as a
break it
viewer
for me.
watching the
No.
So as for
Didn't
a
even think
viewer
about it.
watching the movie and you're following this specific girl, learning all this stuff and rooting for her as she's uncover information, and like, oh well, then the FBI says this, and then it kind of like throws water on whatever fire she was starting to come up with. I guess I don't know. There was parts of the movie that felt like that. So like, but again, I'm like finding nitpicks and things that I'm like, I like the movie. I think it's a good movie. So
Yeah,
I don't know.
it's just like really what it comes down to. Maybe I'm repeating myself and going in circles at this point, but because I am kind of just somewhat struggling because part of me wants to appreciate this unique storytelling and knowing that Megan ain't perfect, but really, really just the robot fight is what kind of throws me off. It's not like Megan's not bad just because it did the obvious thing, but the other part of me is like Megan. These are both smart movies, but Megan is it's got more to say. This movie really, at the end of the day, it was an interesting twists and turns, but it's just like the story of mother and daughter reconciling with this.
It's more plot heavy. It's more plot heavy than themed heavy in this movie particularly, because you will
by necessity, really by necessity. But and that's what I was saying is that like if you could combine these two into one, and it was a movie about a girl literally glued to her screen the whole time, just like we are. Like how clever of like a meta story would that be to combine Megan with Missing, where the girl's obsessed, always plugged into her devices, and whatever action occurs is going on. Like maybe just literally like the AI from Megan is maybe a part of the story, and this girl is obsessed with her devices, and it becomes this like weird addiction or whatever. But this movie isn't. It's not going.
That's not that. It's
not doing anything that intelligent. It's creative in the form. It's not super genius in the content.
I'd rather see Missing and Plane be combined, where Gerard Butler's daughter has to raise money to send to the Philippines.
That's a good point.
Because
the daughter in Plane was
make a viral.
Useless.
Yeah. Well, let's be honest. Nans, let's be honest. I would rather have a robot girl, like a robot toy in Plane. or either way. It doesn't really matter. Like
send Megan in to take them out.
Send Megan to rescue the passengers.
Yeah.
Like, what if Gerard Butler was on that plane and then they were like, "What's this?" And he's like, "Oh, we're extraditing this toy from
Combine all 2023 movies into
all
one.
Those movies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that's the question, right? That's why I keep bringing up form versus content. Would Plane have been a better movie had it been told this way? Would Megan be a better movie had it been told this way? Is Missing the best version of the movie versus
I think
telling it conventionally?
I think it works best this way, because I feel like if you did this story as like a regular like whodunit detective trying to figure out,
people wouldn't care as much.
I don't think it wouldn't. It just wouldn't resonate. I think the charm in this movie is definitely the Google searches, the form. Like I think that's what makes this movie better. That's what. But makes
that's why it's a gimmick movie. Like that's the trouble, is because that it's no different than the classic like Boyhood. It took 12 years to make, and it's
true.
It's like,
okay,
it's impressive on one hand. On the other hand, it's a very simple story.
I think what's different. I think what the biggest difference in between some of those gimmicks, like we talked about Blair Witch, we talked about Paranormal Activity, you're bringing up Boyhood, like, yeah, they're gimmicks in that, like, Boyhood's like, oh, we filmed it for X number of years to make the movie because we wanted the characters to age. Okay, but I mean, you could take that out and it still would be a story about a boy aging and just casting new boys. Great, whatever. You do Blair Witch projects, maybe, like, I guess what you're saying is very close because you like feel very real. It feels very intimate of what's actually going on. But the same, I think you could say about Paranormal Activity. This movie, on the other hand, I feel like you really get a sense of who the characters are, what they're thinking, more than you
good
would
acting
on
like somewhat, like
but
not
I'm
always,
saying,
not always, but like
no,
like
but you're thinking
Kevin.
like just the type, like I mentioned earlier, like, when someone types something and then erases that, like, what does that tell you about the character? When somebody types something to a specific person or says something different to somebody else, what does that tell you about the character?
Or
you don't
likes a
get that.
message instead of responding to it, they just
Yeah.
like it, and that meaning something.
Or has
and,
or if they have green text versus blue text.
Yeah, like
Well, I was
the
thinking
vegan at the picnic.
back
You
to,
get the
to
green.
high school.
Nans
I
is
could
an
never leave a
infamous green
voicemail on
texter.
Charlie's phone.
You what?
I could never leave a voicemail on your phone in high school.
It-
I
it-
think the
just
message
think-
of this movie is just listen to your mom, even if you
I-
don't agree with her. Just
I would-
do what she wants.
I would
Mom knows
I would
better.
reach a
Mom knows
step further to say that it's interesting that if I'm trying to culminate a theme in this movie, right? And I talked about like detectives and people like trying to armchair detective stuff, but another way you could look at this movie is that it is how the other movie is technology and parenting. This one's technology and ourselves and how we interact with people with technology. Like if that makes sense.
But it's less
Like
important.
you could make it's in the movie, but yeah, you're right. It's not the thesis of the movie, I guess is what you're saying.
Yeah. Like it.
We're
and
all in
that's what I mean.
agreement.
That's what I mean.
I think we're all in agreement here where we're at. I
It's
think we're
just
all in agreement.
below
my
Megan.
gut,
Yeah.
my gut. As much I keep trying to justify in my own mind putting missing at the top,
Yeah.
and my gut just keeps saying
can't get there.
and deserve.
You know why? It's because of what Espy said. Megan goes missing on a plane. Like that's why it has to go second because it's the verb in what we've created here.
Megan
it's,
goes
it's
missing
Megan
on a plane.
missing plane. It
He's
has
really
to.
like we might have something
Espy's
here
right.
if we combine all three of these. We'll get a screenplay going immediately.
I want to see a trailer combining them all.
before
So
we plug it
Meanwhile,
in, though,
Avatar 2 has broken $2 billion at the box office.
But you know
wow.
what?
Good for
You know
them.
what
I
though?
still
That
haven't
really,
seen it.
as we're going through these though, what I'm finding more fascinating is really like this isn't movie competitions are not like sports competitions where you have to beat the other movies. You just have to beat your budget. And like so far, Megan's beat its budget. This movie will probably beat its budget pretty quickly. It already
Yeah.
has its $9 million, right? I don't know about Plane. I think Plane is like almost there, but that's what's fun about the budgets for these like really low tier January movies is like, are they going to beat their budgets or not? So
Well,
far,
and we've been, other than Plane, Megan and Missing have been pleasant surprises. I figured that it would be, I knew I would drag my feet to see Missing and then probably be won over by it, and I certainly was. But I'm like, I'm obviously there's a battle, there's an epic battle going on in my brain, but I just keep throwing it back to Megan. Just even on the superficial grounds of it. It is the smarter movie because it doesn't feel the need to be plugged into the screen the entire time with little to no justification. But and that's what I mean. Both of the movies are guilty of the same thing. Okay, the third act is coming. What do we do? Well, obviously we need to have a robot battle. Well, maybe we don't. Maybe we do something a little more clever. Robot battle. And the same thing here, where it's it is clever that it turns out Dad was still alive and Dad has this criminal past and Dad's an overall bastard and all that. And so he kidnaps her and that was like his master plan, right? So instead of it just being like she finds Mom and Mom comes home and that's all great, it turns out that the whole thing, like she went missing in the first place because of Dad. It all comes to a head, and that's why I'm torn. I'm like, that's pretty good, but then even down to it was pretty obvious that at one point she was going to say, "Hey Siri, call the cops." I got to make sure that my
I
Siri
thought
can
Junebug was
do that.
super duper obvious. Like I was like, it's Junebug.
Yeah.
Like, how do you not figure that out?
Yeah,
Everyone
but
figured that
even
out.
regardless, I can't even remember what
She
that
tunes her mom out.
unlocked, what that ability unlocked. But
it was to get into her mom's computer to find out where her mom was at.
Or
She
that's
couldn't-
for her
She could only go
Gmail,
through
yeah.
Kevin's. Yeah, she could only go through
Yeah.
Kevin's stuff. She couldn't
But-
go through her mom's stuff.
But I mean, what did that give her? That didn't give her an exact location, right?
Yeah, it did because she figured out. It was like she could figure out where her mom went, and then she's like, "Oh, my mom
I
never
forget
left."
what exactly was
Because
going
then
on.
Jimmy
she could
Church
also
guy
look-
called.
But remember the movies, like we start off, we go through all this stuff with Kevin. We find out where his location is. We figure out he's been blocking all these other people. We find out his past. We find all this stuff. She takes all the information or the know-how of how to learn all that stuff with Kevin, and then does it with Grace. But the thing she finds surprising with Grace is she only finds out where Grace's location is. Like, she never left Columbia. She finds out that Grace only had one person blocking her, which does way more than just 50 people she blocked. So she's like, wait, who's this one dude that she ended up blocking? It's just like, wait, now it does lead to other things, but that it's because she was able to hack Kevin in the first place, and how she was able to learn all this stuff about Kevin, that she utilizes all that knowledge to use for her. Again, it's so hard. Like, I'm kind of like, and more we talk about it, the more I'm like, maybe it's better than Megan. But it's just a fun movie to talk about. I don't know.
I just think about how by the end we're just staring at blurry surveillance footage, which it's not like it was torturous. It's not like it was bad, but it's just like, this TikTok's a gimmick. Like, why can't we break?
Charlie, I will also say gimmick? I thought that the big twist thing that she said was better in Megan, where she's like, you didn't meet my third member of the family. She's like, what's she talking about? Bruce. That was better. I think that was just better than Hey Siri. I was like, okay.
I can give it to Megan on that.
She should have hacked into a robot.
Yeah. She should have turned to her dad. She's like, I have one more member of our family. He's
this
like,
movie,
Siri? This
movie seriously had me. I think it was up until she got kidnapped that I was like, this so far is number one. This might be, at this point, I think we're repeating ourselves.
We are.
Something fierce.
So I will say
we are torn. But my gut just keeps going back to number two.
Yeah. Go see this movie. You won't be disappointed. It is very good. Like, I would say go see it.
Yeah.
If this list was literally just like, see it, don't go see it, wait, like,
all of them are
like,
see it.
Plain to Charlie, plain was like, burn it into a field and never let it.
Just again, go watch YouTube videos of action. Like,
plain is.
But it had really good shooting. So what? So
Charlie,
what?
It had more shooting.
Play video games.
It had more planes.
It had
more
one plane.
It had more criminals.
It did
have more criminals. It had more Filipino pirates. Okay, so Nico thinks it's still.
Nico, do you have a hook? Do you have like a solid? This is why for this. Like, even if you just Javi,
Give
for Javi alone,
just for Javi,
it's better than Megan. But I think there wasn't enough Javi. I was hoping that Javi was going to make a dramatic turn, and Javi's like, well, I am ex.
He shows cartel. Up at her ring doorbell.
Like he's like I'll find tu madre, and he just goes off on like a murder spree.
Yeah,
that'd have been awesome. Javi was just like the man, but then at the end, I think it was just like,
Nico, what is it? Nico, is there anything specific that you liked more about this movie than Megan? Because I think Charlie and Nance and I all agree, like we like both of these movies a lot. Like, they're both
I haven't
really
typed
good.
it in yet. I'm hovering over. I don't want to type it into the sacred list until we know for sure. So if anybody watching has anything to say for why Missing should be at the top,
a handful of people watching.
Just keep.
If you've seen both movies, give us your opinion in the live chat.
Yeah.
Of the handful of people watching, how many have actually seen both? We're looking at a Nico. You might be the only you could sway this. You could be the hero of this moment. We need a savior. But like again, thematically speaking, Megan had something to say. This movie is creative in its form. The story isn't like it's interesting, and yes, it twists and turns, but it's not like it's not like crazy, groundbreaking, amazing. It's
all right. Hold on.
Had something to say.
Nico's got something to say. All right, Nico,
throw it up.
It's not. Oh, there it is.
Read it.
I just dug this style / type of movie more. I loved Searching too, but overall, Megan is probably better and deeper. Oh, okay. He's walking it back a bit.
So that's roughly what I just said. It's just like Megan had
all
something
of us are
to
in
say.
agreement.
Like, that's not always going to save Megan. At some point, a movie is going to come about that has that completeness. And I will say that Missing feels more complete than Megan did, but at the same time, they like I laid out, they both kind of stumble into that third act and where it's like, what do we do now? And there's
Robot fight.
I think they're like McCurdy. I think you said it. It's like they're like
this.
they're that
They're
far
Megan
apart.
is
this.
1.
So
Yeah.
close.
Missing is 1.5.
Plane is all
Plane
the way down
3.
by my balls.
So yeah,
Plane's by my balls. These are like right above my eyes because these are highbrow entertainment. Highbrow entertainment by my balls, right? There we go.
I'm gonna fall back on Megan is accessible to everybody. Missing
that's a good point.
is like specific to like Zoomers,
Well, I would say millennial
screen addicted
Zoomers.
millennial
Plane
Zoomers.
is for our weird dads.
Yeah, plane is
Megan is for everybody.
plain.
Missing is for only people our age and younger.
It's
really
so
wish-
specific.
So
But
we didn't talk
that
about
and the
this.
theme.
We
That-
didn't talk about
that
this,
and
but
the theme.
originally
That and the theme, McCurdy. Megan had
trying
a
to
theme.
say
It had a
something.
central theme. Did Missing
didn't
have a
have
central
ninjas.
theme? Did it?
It didn't have ninjas. It didn't have shutters.
Oh God.
Okay, I keep going back to it. Okay, sorry. The one thing I was going to say though that I forgot to, I was going to mention to this to our audience was that like originally my dad was actually going to come with me to see this movie, and I would have loved that just to get his response because like
He
you
would
and
have
I, like
ruined the
we're
movie
talking
for you.
about this movie, like we love the movie, but is someone that's a little bit older than us going to understand what's going on as we're watching the movie? And like
Yeah.
I would have loved to have that take just to have that piece of evidence to be like, yeah, maybe it's not for everybody. You know, like I would have loved that, but we don't. So we're just gonna go off of. I guess we're all in agreement here. Like
That's
it's gotta
what's
be, it's
fun
gotta be a
about
close
these
two.
discussions is comparing things that like should not be compared. Like
It's just fun. We're
comparing
having fun.
Plane to like a good version of Plane versus something like Megan or whatever. And my gut just keeps going back to Missing being at number 2 because it's
It's fine.
It's just
I
that gimmick, that
second.
damn gimmick.
I second the motion.
All right,
Thirdeth the motion.
it's been certified. Oh, I can't change it
Certified,
right
bro.
here. Pulling up stickies on my computer. I'm about to do an impression of Junebug. Look, I'm doing an impression of Junebug.
Can
Oh,
we?
shoot.
Can you share your screen?
Missing.
It is. He is sharing his.
Oh my! Whoa! Look at it! Look how
It's like
fast he
it's
is.
like we remade the movie on our computer.
Why do you keep doing lowercase Missing?
Like again?
It's a movie.
I really wanted us to
Movie,
have.
Look, Nance. It's all lowercase.
Eh,
It is.
somebody
All,
made
it's
it.
always
I-
lowercase.
I don't
I
like it.
really wanted us to have parody versions of us in this movie because there's a moment in this movie where
We're
it's
not
like
cool enough.
everybody on the internet shows up, and I was like, "Damn it! I wish we were in this movie.
Yeah. And
I wish
they-
we were this bunch of jabronis just complaining about some bull crap that was like, it's like."
Well,
didn't
she's
even
engaging
matter.
with them. She's like, none of this is true. Like, don't read the comments.
Yeah,
Don't,
just
if you're ever putting yourself out there, don't read the comments. Never read the comments.
I actually don't.
They
Only when
raise
we're
your
doing
blood
these.
pressure. Unless
You
it's
do.
Nico or SB, don't read the comments.
Is Charlie missing? He could be.
Yeah.
He could be. SB Nico, thank you guys for coming out and watching the movie and,
Yeah.
and giving
Yeah.
us your thoughts because
Which
we
is always
both
gonna
we all
be-
love this movie. Like we all enjoyed it.
Like, again, pleasantly surprised. I was pleasantly surprised by Megan and Missing, thinking that they were going to be typical "fuck you, it's January" movies. But I
Not
liked.
bad.
I
What
liked
is on the
both.
horizon? What is
Okay.
What's up and coming next
So
week?
next week, as far as I can tell, the only two movies that I saw, I don't know, maybe we should put the trailers live on here and then we can decide. Do you want to do that? That would
Just
be
based
fun.
on the trailers.
I honestly don't know what happens with
If
the
you do that, but
monetization
it's like it's a
and stuff
trailer.
like that.
It's just
Like,
a trailer. It's not
No,
like we're
but-
making.
I know, but I don't know. We could do it. Let's just do it.
Let's just do it. Okay, let me pull up. I'll pull up one. You pull up one. We'll pull up
Well,
the trailer for this movie. Okay, so I'll pull up the trailer for Fear.
Okay.
One of the two movies. There's two movies coming out next week.
Theatrical?
Fear, theatrical. It's Fear and The Infinity Pool. They're both horror films.
All right. We're going back to your
Uh,
screen, McCurdy. So
okay.
be careful what you search here.
I'm gonna put some dark porno.
Fear.
Hold on, let me make sure this is.
Oh,
the
that's
right...
a 1996 movie. I was like,
Hold
is
on,
that
hold on.
movie
Let me make sure
older?
it's the
What
right
is
one
that?
because. Okay, all right. Here we go.
It
Here
is
we go.
Mark Wanda.
I'm bringing it over to our little list of. Hold on.
Javi!
Hey, here we go. Was there anybody you didn't like in the movie, by the way? Were you like, oh, I didn't like that movie? Hold on. Let's just go to our good old friend
I
YouTube
think
here.
so.
No.
The Kevin
liked-
actor I've always really liked. So
He's great. He's great.
like him.
So Fear 2023. We're gonna look at that trailer first. I just want to make sure it's the right trailer.
Pass.
I think it's this one. Okay, here we go. Here we go. The audio's on.
Okay, wait. Just leave the audio off. That's what would be the trouble. Just leave that off. I
So
can't
we're
hear- I don't think
watching
I
a
can hear it
trailer
anyway.
with no audio.
Oh, we're talking
Oh, I
over
can
it.
hear it. I can hear it.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is
Yeah,
So
we can't hear it
Pacific
anyway.
Northwest,
It's fine.
old cabin, girl, spooky tree. Oh, she's with friends. Is this Cabin in the Woods? Is that a
Okay, is that
TikToker?
T-Pain.
so they're
Wait.
on a
Or
they're out.
a Viner, I mean.
They're at a bonfire, and they are
Not T-Pain.
talking about their personal fears.
That was a rapper. T.I. T.I.
No, that was TIP, Charlie.
Isn't T.I. and T.I.P. the same thing?
Then I don't know. They're different.
T-Pain,
Okay.
T.I., and T.I.P. are all the same person.
What about TP?
What about P.T.?
Wait, is this us or no, not us? What's that Key
Smile.
Peele guy movie? No.
Can you read the subtitles?
I think
Oh.
I'm just gonna go with Infinity Pool.
I'm not good at reading.
How about we stick to Infinity Pool? Infinity Pool seems like that'll
Let's
be...
do it. Cut here. Let's put yeah. Yeah,
like
this movie feels
the next horror movie that looks truly horrific is the Evil Dead.
Hold on. Here, let's put Infinity Pool up, okay? Let's see Infinity Pool
Okay.
trailer, and then you guys. I think Infinity Pool just looks better as a movie. It's just more art housey. I don't know what the better what to sell you on necessarily.
Oh, is that
It's
Skarsgård?
Sarsgaard. It's Skarsgård's in
I
it.
do like
Skarsgård.
him. Oh, I think I've seen this trailer, which is a good sign.
This one looks a little more horrific, actually. It's got Mia Goth, who was in X and Pearl.
I've not seen either of those, but I've heard she's good in them.
I've heard great things about X. I haven't really heard much about Pearl yet.
Yeah, yes, Nico
Nico
just
says
said,
Infinity Pool is Cronenberg Jr.
Cronenberg
which is
Jr. Okay.
interesting.
Who did Fear?
I don't
should
know.
we even factor that in?
Like this is a
This looks
movie.
I'm already more interested in this.
Fear seems like
I
movie of the
agree.
week. This is a film.
We're
what
gonna
you
watch
call
movie
film.
versus the film. Movie versus the film. And I guess if our list is going by week to week and we're trying to watch the best movies, you know what I mean? Like eventually we're gonna get the better. Hopefully we'll get the better movies already. You know, like
I'm for
Fear
this.
Fear
vote
looks more like.
Infinity Pool. I vote
Fear-
Infinity Pool.
I agree. I think we should see Infinity Pool. This just looks horrific. I feel like I'm going to be very queasy.
But if you
watching
guys know about anything else coming out on streaming, even
Yeah, we
or
at some point
theatrical, let us know.
we gotta hit a stream.
We do have a Discord channel, which I think most of you are already in, but let us
Mhm.
know.
All right, this is getting too racy. We're gonna go back.
Does she not have eyebrows?
There was
Is that
almost
just what she
nudity
looks
there, so
Oh boy.
good
Well,
thing
it's
the
not a
kids
red
are
band
in
trailer.
bed.
It's just a regular band trailer.
Okay, it's settled. We're gonna do Infinity Pool
I wanna see the
next
Northman.
week.
I hear
As
it's
of
crazy.
what are we even at? We've been going, man.
This will be
that's
week
not
4.
bad. Hour and a half talking about missing. Fun.
That's I think
That's
I
not
think we
Makes
bad.
could
sense for how
probably
close it
I
was.
feel like we stick to about an hour for each of these if you know.
Yeah, I'm sure some will be difficult. This is just getting started with how
Yeah.
difficult some of these might be to
Because I
place,
think we'll
but-
go a little bit longer with some of the because but then again I do think that we're gonna get to some of these movies that are gonna be these bigger blockbuster movies and we're gonna realize that we're gonna be like, yeah, the big blockbuster movie is not the best movie. It's a lot of fun, but maybe
Yeah.
you know, we might still like this
Ant-Man.
movie. Ant-Man.
Mania.
You know, and then you know, I think the week following we probably go see the M. Night Shyamalan movie, even though that's not the one I really want to go see.
Yeah, I'm gonna drag my feet to that one too.
I think
I'm
that
gonna-
one looks interesting.
It looks interesting.
His
but I
movies
think the
always look
concept's kind of-
interesting. They always look interesting, and then they.
And they aren't.
Yeah, SB. I think SB even mentioned like, yeah, there's the 80 for Brady, which I'm like, I don't.
I will.
Let me put it this
not
way:
be
it's
part of
not
this show anymore.
the
if
best
we
way to
see
put
them.
it. It's not our demographic. I think our demographic's going to go for the Shyamalan movie. The
People that would see
Shyamalan.
that movie should not see Missing.
Exactly. Yeah. Those two audiences do not.
Those
commingle.
ladies only know how to use iPad.
Now
I would
a
watch it, though.
movie. Now, a movie that I want to go see just because we're doing this and we've been doing the A-listers. I want to go see Skinamarink. It's like
Never heard of
like low budget horror movie.
Go see it. Let us know if we should do
I
that.
want to see it,
and
but
then we
I
could.
don't think we should consider it in this just because it's kind of just like an off
No.
the beaten path thing. But I really want to go see that.
If
So I
it's
might be doing
good,
that
if
this
it's
weekend.
good, we'll do one. Like we don't need to stick to just like Missing. Just stubbornly stuck to an arbitrary rule. We're not going to do that here. We can do whatever we want.
Are you
Maybe
sure?
at some point we do a 51st episode where we bump plane off the bottom, by adding something else.
Yeah.
We can do whatever we want. So,
Yeah.
but in the meantime, fellas, it's time to wrap this up.
Okay.
One more time
subscribe,
that list.
super chat, super
One more
thanks.
time that list
Discord,
is
become a member, all that crap.
There we go.
Megan Missing Plane. Yeah, subscribe, become a member so you can use emojis. And like SB and Nico, you can have a really
Be
cool golden
super
gun
users,
next to your name,
like Junebug.
like Junebug.
Who are we
But
toasting to?
here's McCurdy. I'm switching back to you because you need to
Okay.
put up a photo of Javi because we are going to
Oh, that's
toast
who we got to toast.
to the best character in this movie,
Yeah, Javi.
Mr. Javi,
For sure.
who
'Cause he was in
he should
24.
he should have
He's got a
shown up to
scooter.
save the
He's
day
cool.
at the end there. Javi should have shown.
Do you
All
agree?
that
That would have
Yeah.
been dumb. That
That
would
was
have
You
the
been
thing.
paid me
super dumb.
movie
$8
is-
an hour. I was able to afford a plane ticket.
Yeah.
Yeah,
My
no,
son
that-
flew me here.
No, that's the thing. Is the movie's like it leads you to the point where you're like, oh, he's gonna say, oh, he doesn't save the day. Siri saves the day. You're like,
Siri
ah.
saves the day. Exactly.
They
And it's
set it
like,
up. Okay, I'll give you that. They set the Siri thing up in a clever way. I'll give him that. But Javi,
How?
come on.
because she left
Come
her
on.
phone.
She should have
No,
did
because
it.
they kept
way sooner
mentioning
than
the
she did.
Siri thing. That was a continuous thing that they would mention with the mom, is she would always say Siri, and she's like, oh, you don't have to say Siri for everything. And then
But it
sure
wasn't
enough,
the
they
mom who
said
did it
radio.
at the end. It was still June.
I
It would
know.
have been funny if the mom did.
I
If
know.
the mom had finally done
But
it correctly.
I get it, but like at the end of the movie, it's like Javi's they had also set it up so Javi could save the day, and then it turns out that plan falls through. So
I mean, even,
Javi,
even
here's
something like
to-
that trips me up. Where like the
no, you're fine.
even something like it being Siri as opposed to making up a new Siri. And I get that everything was very accurate so far as
Yeah.
Apple goes, but like I would appreciate something more if it had been completely original, like they had completely formulated their own computer interface versus just doing something real to life. But that's a personal preference by me. I'm the guy who I don't even like seeing
Linux?
the news in a movie.
I know you don't.
I don't like-
Yeah.
Everything's CNN. If the studio owns CNN,
I
it's
think it-
CNN.
I
If the
think it
studio owns
adds some
Fox,
reality.
it's Fox News.
I
I don't like that stuff. I like them
I think it
coming up
adds
with
some
their own
reality
stuff.
to the film, but
Sure, but the
that all
ending of
said-
your movie is the big climax of your movie is "Hey Siri." I get that it
Saved
makes sense. It's
by
realistically
Siri.
makes sense, but it's that
every time I'm saying Siri, my phone is doing it. Like
I know,
it's just
I
doing
keep
it right now. I
checking
go,
it
hey
'cause
Siri, and then my phone.
mine already
going,
called
hey.
the police.
Sorry, people watching.
So
know?
anyway,
Anyway,
we already put it in position 2. Javi, who
his real
best
actor's
character.
name Joaquim de Almeida. I probably
Okay.
screwed that up.
Well, that's
Joaquin
just-
de Almeida.
Pretty good.
Mierda. Wait, Joaquin of the shit? Del Mierda? Joaquin of the
El-
shit.
Almeida.
Anyway.
Anyway.
Whatever.
Anyway.
He's the shit.
To Javi, aka wait, his real name's what? Joaquin. To Javi
Joaquin.
/ Joaquin.
You guys are taking too
Joaquim.
Thanks, Javi. Even though you deserve better. Okay. We're out. Good night.